All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over a series of video presentations for the Rankin Technical College Application and Web Development AWD1111.NET Framework with Web Databases class. And I'm going over our book, ASP.NET MVC with Entity Framework and CSS by Naylor. I'm in the middle of Chapter 2 of 18, and I'm up to page 16 in our text. And on page 16, they start talking about adding controllers and views. Notice step 1. Build the solution by clicking Build Solution from the menu. If you don't build before you add the controller, you may get an error message. You probably will get an error message. So why tempt fate? I'm going to come in here and click Build Solution. And I should get in my Build Dialog box down here in a little bit just exactly what's going on. All right, there shouldn't be any problems. I don't think I put in any code that can break anything, and it looks like I might not even get any output. All right. So again, I'm just going to keep going and following the steps. So I want to right mouse click on my controllers folder and choose Add Controller. Let's come in here and let's close this DAL that we've got open, and let's close this views I've got open. All right, right mouse click on Controller, Add Controller. And we are told that in the Add Scaffold window, which is what you see there right now, we want to choose the MVC controller with views option using Entity Framework, which is right there. As the comment says, it's an MVC controller which will be created with actions and razor views to create, read, update, delete, which is our CRUD operations, and also list from an Entity Framework data context. All right, so we click Add Next, and that brings us up to this dialog. And for the dialog, we want the model class here to be category. We want the data context class to be store context. I don't have a store context. I've got an application DB context. I wonder if I was supposed to name that store. Oh, it is right there. So why do I not have that store context? Huh. I don't think I can just manually type it. Well, maybe store context BS for baby store dot DAL. All right, I don't know if it'll take that or not, but we're going to find out. Ensure that the generate views, reference script libraries, and use a layout page are all checked. Leave the controller name set to categories controller. All right, now you'll notice that is grayed out, so it doesn't like something that's in there. So I think I know what it is. This store context has to inherit from context. All right, probably from DB context. All right, and I omitted that. Not on purpose, but I did anyway. So let's do a save all and let's build again. All right. Build started. And once it gets done, we're going to repeat the steps that we just did. Now, it did not create a controller. All right. It says it succeeded. So again, I will right mouse click, add controller, MVC5 controller with views using Entity Framework. Category, BS2.models. Now let's look in here. Now we have our store context. That's good. These should be checked. Categories controller, notice the add is not grayed out anymore. Boom. Now if we look in our controllers, we have 3, we have 3, we have 3, we have 3, we have 3. All right. It says we have 3, but let's see, did it make it under the DAL? I don't know. Oh, there it is. There's our categories controller right there. Now I'm going to close a few of these things that I probably won't need. I can always open them up later if I do. All right. And the next thing that the author says in here, one thing I've really, so far, and I've only read the first few chapters of this book. I've read the chapters 1 through 4. I'm doing it a little differently, and I've read chapter 12. All right. But one thing I like about this book is the gentleman who wrote it, Mr. Lee Naylor, is very thorough. In other words, he creates this. Then he comes back in here. This is what we just did. And he says, let's examine the categories controller, class, and methods. It says how it contains several methods for performing CRUD. CRUD, again, create, read, update, and delete operations on categories. All right. The code, private store context DB equal new store context. Let's make sure we have that in there. There it is. All right. So the author says what that does it instantiates a new context object for use by the controller. This is then used throughout the lifetime of the controller and disposed of by the dispose method at the end of the controller code. So, I could come in here, copy this to the clipboard. I think we're going to write this the same way, aren't we? Paste. And now this may be overkill with what I'm doing in here. All right. But again, instantiates a new object for use by the controller. This is then used throughout the lifetime of the controller and disposed of by the dispose method at the end of the controller code. Is what I just did overkill? Is that too much to put in? You know what? We all have our own thoughts on this stuff. I am introducing some code bloat by putting in comments. But if it helps with an understanding of me, for me or for you, then it's worth it. You are transitioning as a second-year student from an introductory programmer to an intermediate programmer. All right? You should know when you need comments and when you don't need comments. Not just for you, but remember you write comments also so that other people who may end up eventually maintaining your code know what it is you're trying to do. Okay, enough of the sermon. The new categories controller contains the following methods. And this is shown on pages 18 and 19 in the text. There's an index method that is used to return all of the categories to this view. Again, maybe I'm doing overkill. I don't care. And that index method as it says, use to return a list of all categories to there. All right. So that's the first one. Next, the details method finds a single category from the database based on the ID parameter. In fact, I think what I'd like to do is to put that up above and have my own little way of doing this here. Put that here. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing here. In other words, I'm going to grab these comments that I put in, and I'm going to put them up at the top. I think that makes it a little bit easier to read. And yeah, again, like I said, I may have too many blank lines, etc., but you're able to really see what I'm doing in here. All right? I am not going to force you into doing this when you write your own code, putting in these comments like this. But I sure don't think it's a bad idea. All right, I'm already up at 11 minutes, so let's get going. The ID parameter is passed in the URL using the routing system, so if I want to, I can add that comment as well in there. I'm not going to continue to do this, or maybe I will, but we'll see. But the point is, what I want you to understand about this is, again, to me, what I'm doing is it's making it much easier for anyone looking at my code to understand what's going on. All right? And there's that ID parameter right there. It can be null, remember. That's why we get the question mark. So I'll even put in here, can be null. Not in the book, but I'm just putting it in there anyway. The get version. Remember, there's get and there's post. When you have get, you should never ever be doing any CRUD operation other than read. All right? So you should never be changing anything via a get. All right? So this public action result create. The idea behind this one is it's just supposed to show a blank form. That's all it's doing. So it simply returns the create view. It says this may seem a little strange at first, but but what it means is that this returns a view showing a blank HTML form for creating a new category. Now, we didn't do this. But see this right here? We didn't do this. But technically, we could have done this. If you don't have anything there, it assumes a get by default. All right? So, here is, all right, there's the one for the post. This is when we're actually attempting to create. So we're creating, the key thing is this. That's telling us to save it to the database. So again, maybe I'm going a little flaky here with all of the different comments and stuff I'm putting in here. And again, you know what? I don't care. Move these over just a little bit. Should be, of course, that. Paste that in. So this method is called when the user submits the form rendered by the create view. It takes a category as a parameter. There's the category, and adds it to the database. I like better and attempts to add it to the database. If it's successful, it returns the website to the index view. If unsuccessful, it reloads the create view. So it just brings you back to where you were. Maybe you had some kind of an error, a fairly simplistic error, and we'll see those as we go on. All right, again, sorry if I'm going and I'm being too literal here, but as always, there's a method for my madness. All right. It says because this method is a post, it contains some extra code. The HTTP post tells the controller that when it receives a post request, this is the create that should run. The validate anti-forgery token is basically set up to ensure that the form gets the type of data that's requested and that you don't try to put anything bad, for lack of words, in there. All right, that's not well put, but it's what I'll use. All right. The parameters, they've got the bind, include ID name and category. Tell the method to include only the ID and the name properties when you include the new category. You may or may not remember when we created the category, it had 3 fields. It had the ID, which was an int, the name, which was a string, and the virtual property, the iCollection of products. So we don't want those. The author says this is used to protect against overposting attacks by creating a list of safe products to update. It does not work. What we're trying to do is to maintain the integrity of our data. All right. The get version of the edit method contains code identical to that of the details method that we talked about earlier. Finds a category and it returns it to the view. The post is similar to the post we just looked at, but it contains an extra line of code to check that the entity has been modified before attempting to save it to the database. So again, I can grab this, copy it to the clipboard. Again, this is my edit. All right. And again, I might be going a little bit nuts, but tough. All right. So there's that. And let's get over to this one. Try to pretty this up a little bit from before. You saw that, so. right, I'm going to come in and I'm going to add again my comments in here. One more. All right. Okay, it's pretty much the same comment that we had up here, but that's fine. All right. And we've got the delete up here as well. As it says, there are also two versions of the delete method. This is page 20 in the handout. ASP.NET MVC scaffolding takes the approach of displaying the entity details to users and asking them to confirm the deletion using a form to actually submit. The get version is shown here. As it says, you will notice it's virtually identical, not quite, but virtually identical to the details method. All right, the post again performs that anti-forgery check, then finds the category by ID, removes it, and saves the changes. All right, so we'll grab this comment. I'm not even going to put a comment in for the get because, again, it's virtually the same as what we already saw. So let's put the one in there for the post. All right, here we go. Now, the author mentions the auto-generated delete method does not work correctly due to the fact that the product entity contains a foreign key referencing the category entity. In other words, we cannot remove a category as long as there are products that exist underneath that category. We'll fix that in a later chapter. All right. I like this note here. I don't want to read to you, but let's kind of summarize it. The author says you should not allow a get to do any updating, deleting, inserting for a lot of reasons. But one key reason the author says is that this the search engine spider will crawl public hyperlinks. And it says potentially it might be able to delete all the records if there is an unauthenticated link. Not a good idea. Later, in a later chapter, we will add security to editing categories, and then this won't matter anymore. All right. The views associated with the categories are found under Views Categories. So, here they are. You will notice when we look here under the Categories Index view that's on pages 21 and 22. In fact, let's do it this way. Let's bring up the code in our Category Views Index. And here it is. So as we look at this from the top, again, don't let these squigglies, they'll come and go. But the first line here, that line, is the model that the view is based on. The index method of the categories controller class passes a list of categories to the index view. This is the title that will appear there. Notice we're using ViewBag here. ViewBag is something that works dynamically. Good news. Bad news is the ViewBag is limited. So in a later chapter, we'll replace the ViewBag where we're doing some of this stuff with other code. All right. Next, we've got here an action link. All right. And that action link creates a hyperlink in the create view with the link create new. It's an example of an HTML helper method. Next, we've got the display name for. That displays the name of the specified field. In this case, it's the name of the category field, which right now is just name. Not a really good name, but it's just name. All right. Then we've got the code that's right here. This code loops through each of the categories contained in the model and displays the value contained in the name field, followed by 3 links that allow you to edit, show the details, or delete. And that last parameter that's there provides the ID. Okay? Now, I do like that particular comment. So I'd like to put a comment here. But notice if I put in this, all right, it actually looks like it will work. And that's good because it's green. But I'm going to grab that comment from the book. I mean, this just says it's the title. All right, this just says basically, most of the stuff that's in here makes sense. All right, we could put a comment in here, the model that the view is based on. We could put a thing in there that says title, etc. Most of these I find to be self-explanatory, but I like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that, and that's the comment that's on page 82. I'm sorry, page 22. And I'm going to go and put it into my code here. One thing also, and you're all smart people, I'm sure you realize this, but the other thing putting these comments in here does is typically what's going to happen is I do a save all here. Typically what's going to happen by putting in comments like this, again, typically what's going to happen is it'll force the reader to read the comment. All right? Now, right now, on the next page in the handout, or the book, I should say, they say here, this is the stuff that you'll have in there. All right? But we haven't gone in and created anything yet, so we're not going to see that stuff. All right? So, the code generated by the categories detail.cshtml, remember, this is a file that has both C# in it. All right, it has both C# in it and and it has HTML. The C# that's in there that starts with the @ sign means that it's Razor code. All right. So let's bring up the details.cs HTML. And as I stop using one of these, all right, I will do a save all. I will close that. I don't think I need the controller right now. So let's go next into the details view. And there it is. Again, we see the model it's based off of. We see some Razor code with a title. We've got an H2 tag in here. You'll notice this stuff is within a div tag. All right, so let's take a look at our text and see what it says. It says the code is even simpler than the index view because it is designed to display only a single entity or a single record of information. The model is now a single category rather than the collection. And not only that, it's whatever category we had in there. All right. The same HTML display helpers are used as in the index view, but this time, since we're only showing a single record, there is no need for any kind of loop. All right. Okay, so that's that one. Next, we have the create. So we didn't do anything in here. We don't have to save. We can just close this. But let's open up the create. All right. I'm already at 32 minutes, so I am going to do the create and the edit and the delete. All right, but I'm going to try to do those fairly quickly. All right. So the create view displays a blank HTML form to allow the creation of a category. It says it implements a lot of new features. Okay. Notice it's submitted as a post because we are attempting to change. In this case, create or insert. All right. It shows you the code here in the book on the bottom of page 24 and then on page 25. Says the first thing to notice is the using HTML begin form, which tells the user to wrap everything inside of this using statement in an HTML form. Let's quickly grab that. Go back to our code. All right, find our using statement, which is right here. Paste that in. All right. Now, it's still recognizing that, so I'm going to remove the at. And I'm just going to say the using statement. Tells the view to wrap everything in an HTML form. Okay, so that's the first thing. Next, the anti-forgery we already looked at. All right. And finally, we've got this validation summary. Okay. Which is right here. And I'm going to put that in again inside of a comment. Now, this is going to look a little right now, but don't worry about it. Basically, what it's saying, got to remove all of these inside of here, is that it's using a helper so that if for any reason our input is invalid, it's going to use, I believe that's what it's going to use in here is some bootstrap, so that if it's invalid, it's going to let the system know that by changing color or style or whatever. And it's something that'll be discussed later on in the book. All right, so I'll just leave it at that. right, there's more stuff. Creating a new label element. Display the correct HTML. The final piece, as it says in there, is this. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to grab all of this right here. I'm just trying to do this for my own edification here. I am going to put this in here, and I'm going to do a search, and everywhere I've got an @ statement, I'm going to remove it. So they're all gone. This is just getting to be way too out of control here. I apologize for this. But like I said, as we get started, I think at least this makes more sense to do it this way. You may totally disagree. Notice on the bottom here it says there's no rule set, but that will be explained later. So, hopefully I did that correctly. And let's go back to our code. So we're in here. And what I'm going to just throw it right here. Alright, so I've got this big, humongo comment in here that explains what's going on. Okay. Again, you may not like the fact that I'm doing it this way, but I'm doing it this way anyway. Alright. Last thing in here, they talk about this section scripts. This is used to include the JavaScript files for validation. Again, as the author oftentimes says, there'll be more on this in a later chapter. Alright, the category edit view, which is on pages 27 and 28. It displays a form to allow for the editing of the category passed to it by the get version. So the get passes the empty form. Alright, the post will allow you to actually change that. Alright, so make the changes and write them back. So there's the page. The only new helper in here is the hidden for, which creates a hidden element. All right, so let's grab that. So this is the edit. There's the hidden right there. rid of that @ sign. So remember, when we are working with something, that is a get, we are not changing anything. When we are working with something with a post, we are. All right. Finally, the only other thing that's here is the category delete view. So let's save, close this. Let's bring in our delete view from here. All right. And the author says it's similar, but it also contains a form to submit to the post. It does not introduce any new features, and the auto-generated code is shown there. We will talk about this in more depth and breadth of coverage in class. All right. So before I go in and add the product controller and views, which is very short, and we come in and start working with those, let's stop right here. So this will be the end of part 2 for chapter 2.